This video will 100% confirm without a doubt they are lying and are fabricating this assassination attempt.
Caught them.
So this official body cam footage is filled with fuck-ups, but one damn unexcusable fuck-up. The body-worn camera info banner is supposed to be like Motorola's body-worn camera.
Not sure why a city would fund for multiple body-worn camera systems, but that is if they are actually supposed to be different systems.
Actually, I know they are supposed to mimic the real Motorola body-worn camera systems. Because enormous fuck-up involves this banner.
Obviously, the blurry face was added in post-production.
But body cam banners aren't. The banner is recorded into raw data video.
Keep in mind the banner's timestamp and camera ID number are one of the main factors why they were invented.
The metadata on body-worn camera videos are tamper-proof and use a high-bit encryption authorization process.
So when this witness's head is popping in front of the info banner, you know they fucked up.
Fucked up.
No, I am not saying this was an AI-generated video. And no, I am not saying they are all crisis actors.
What I am saying is Donald J. Trump did not get shot. What I am saying is this official body-worn camera video has been 100% tampered with.
And have been saying that this was a false flag that was disguised as an HC training exercise.
As you can see this video, multiple agencies are currently taking part in this LARP lesson.
All three officers are from different branches of law enforcement. All three officers drove in a different government-issued patrol car.
All right, guys, happy Thursday. I promised you that today we were going to be discussing Building 7, 9/11, a lot of things that we are told that we should never forget. But I mean, I have a theory. I think in reality, there are a lot of things that we're supposed to never remember. I mean, we know how this works now. We're all kind of falling down the rabbit hole together, realizing that a lot of things that we thought were so really are not, and that in reality, there have been some people engaged in creating mass psychosis events, things that are so traumatizing to the public that it completely modifies our human behavior. And what bigger event, and I'm talking, of course, about myself at the time, I'm a millennial, I think I was in 6th grade. What bigger event do you have in your memory than 9/11? You know exactly where you were. And there may be some things, maybe you were too young, that should have struck you as odd then, but will definitely strike you as odd now. And we're going to talk about those things. I'm going to give you 5 things that you should definitely never remember about 9/11. That's what's coming up on Candace. All right, so what was the psychosis that was formulated after 9/11? I would say that all of us feared Muslims without question. I could not stand being around them. I just thought every single one of them was going to be a terrorist. I did. I felt that way. I didn't want to go to their houses. I didn't want to be friends with them. I actually felt so badly yesterday. There was some thread that went viral on Twitter, and it was a younger Muslim woman discussing how it was for her when on 9/11 she got picked up from school and her dad sat her down and explained to her essentially that things were about to get really bad for her. And she didn't understand. She didn't do anything. And her dad explained to her that didn't really matter because she was going to be blamed. And I felt badly because I know that I was one of these people that just blamed all Muslims. But by the way, I was programmed to do that. I mean, come on. You know that that was the vibe they were putting down. They're all terrorists, give up. They're going to come for us. They're taking down towers. They are radical. They're jihadists. And they impressed upon the youth, the future generation, that no matter what, whatever we did in the Middle East didn't matter because we were getting terrorists, right? It had a major implication on our foreign policy for decades to come. Still today, you're not supposed to bat an eyelash when Muslim kids are blown up. That's kind of the vibe. And if you do bat an eyelash, well, you'll end up on Rumble. because you're not allowed to talk about these things in mainstream places. But the public is waking up, and we're definitely going to discuss them. Just want to say right at the top here, I know there are so many people. Look, I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, who know families, who know individuals whose lives were impacted by this event. There is no question that this event happened. And we don't speak about this event and all of these question marks because we disrespect these individuals, but actually it's out of a tremendous amount of respect. As in, if this had happened to my family members, I would never rest until I got the answers to the questions that I am about to ask. I would never rest. And so, as I said, we are doing this out of reverence for the victims and the victims' families. So what do we have first? Okay, well, something that they don't want you to remember is how odd it is that in all of the madness and all of the days following 9/11 and in the day leading up to 9/11, we were essentially told that we couldn't find human bodies and we had to understand how steel could melt. But what luck, because we knew exactly who did it instantly, because they just kept finding passports. Do you remember this? Check out this news clip.
Another development on Saturday, New York officials revealed at a news conference here in the city that a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that. No other details were given, but the discovery prompted the FBI and police to expand the search area down in Lower Manhattan.
He says, if you can believe that, and the answer is no, I cannot believe that, but that is the reality. In total, we were told that 4 of the hijackers' passports survived in whole or in part. 2, they said, were recovered from the crash site of United Airlines Flight 93 in Pennsylvania. So like this plane crashed, but they were able once again to find paper. You guys have a passport today. Just imagine paper. Somehow we're able to recover this from a crash site. And they also found the passport of one hijacker on American Airlines Flight 11. They said a passerby had picked it up and given it to an NYPD detective shortly before the World Trade Center towers collapsed. Now, of course, if you're thinking rationally and not emotionally, you're going, what's going on? What are these hijackers doing? Why are they sprinkling their passports? Like that in and of itself is weird. So you're telling me when that plane crashed in Pennsylvania, what did he roll down the window of the plane, which you can't roll down, and drop it out? Or he had it on him and it just, again, was recovered? What's going on here? Why are there passports in the World Trade Center? What happened as the plane was coming in? He dropped his passport. He was flying to New York. A lot of questions there. But again, these are supposed to be things that we are not supposed to remember. And if you can believe it, then I guess, like that guy says, then you can believe it. Of course, the second thing, and this one really drives people crazy, you are not supposed to remember this at all. But it turns out that there were some people who definitively knew that something was going to take place on that day. Some people came camera ready to capture what was going to happen on that day. Of course, notoriously, ABC News covered a woman who looked out and saw what was soon determined to be Israelis celebrating, she said celebrating, dancing after the towers were hit. Take a listen to this segment.
In the days after the September attacks, there were countless rumors about strange coincidences surrounding the events. One report about a group of Middle Eastern men spotted the morning of September 11th parked just across the river from New York City has not gone away. Investigation of their presence has led to questions about whether Israel was conducting espionage on U.S. soil. We're joined now by ABC's John Miller with an exclusive report this evening.
That's right, Elizabeth. This is a case that took the FBI and the CIA more than 2 months to sort out, while 5 Israelis waited in jail. It began when this woman was watching the Twin Towers burning from her apartment in New Jersey. She noticed 3 men on top of a van, posing for pictures with the towers burning in the background.
And I could see that they were like happy. You know, they didn't look shocked to me. You know, they didn't look shocked. I thought it was very strange.
The witness called police, who stopped the van hours later and arrested 5 men. All 5, it turns out, were Israeli. They were turned over to the FBI. Sources tell ABC News during a check of national security databases, some of the men were listed as having had connections with Israeli intelligence. At the FBI, that set off alarm bells. The FBI needed the answers to 3 important questions. Who were these men? What brought them to that parking lot on the morning of September 11th? And did they have any advance knowledge of what was going to happen that day? The men said they were just taking pictures at the time. They said they worked for a company called Urban Moving. The FBI obtained a search warrant for the company's offices.
2 SUVs were filled up with between 9 and 12 boxes and computers.
Not long after the arrests, the offices of Urban Moving were simply abandoned. Almost everything was left behind. In jail, the 5 Israelis were repeatedly interrogated and given lie detector tests. Stephen Gordon was their American lawyer.
They were asked questions if they had ever been approached by or hired by any non-United States intelligence community.
While there is still some debate among American intelligence officials, many investigators believe some of the men were part of an Israeli operation aimed at monitoring radical Islamic charities that support groups like Hamas, something lawyers for the 5 men and the Israeli government strongly deny.
These 5 Israelis were not involved in any intelligence operation in the United States. The story is simply false.
In the end, the FBI concluded there was no evidence that any of the 5 men had advance knowledge of the September 11th plot. After 71 days, the 5 Israelis were deported, leaving some ruffled feathers among both U.S. and Israeli officials. According to federal officials, the 5 men have been barred from returning to the United States for 10 years, they say because they violated immigration laws.
Bottom line, John, is there any evidence any of these 5 men knew about the September 11th attacks before they occurred?
The FBI spent a great deal of time examining this question. It does not appear that they were in place taking pictures before the planes hit, but shortly thereafter. And they say they haven't uncovered evidence that any of these 5 men, and they did their backgrounds, they searched apartments, they telephone records and so on, had any advance knowledge of the attack.
And while the FBI or certain sources might believe that, in fact, they were Israeli intelligence, they don't believe that the U.S. was a target, that they were actually investigating Muslim groups?
They believe if this was an intelligence operation by Israel, that it was focused on the Islamic groups and charities that raise money for groups that are considered by U.S. law enforcement and others terrorist groups. And you'll note that after September 11th, the U.S. moved on many of these groups with indictments, arrests, raids on their headquarters, something that hadn't happened prior to this.
These are groups that Israel believes have been funding Hamas and other terrorist organizations.
Groups that are responsible for most of the suicide bombings there.
What can I say other than no further comment? You know, I'm just disappointed that ABC News would run such an anti-Semitic segment regarding our friend and our ally. Then there was the strange case of Odigo. You may have heard me speaking about this in a prior episode. So Odigo, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it was an instant messaging service. It was Israel-owned, and it was operated by Israel with headquarters that were based just 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center. Now, according to Haaretz, that is an Israeli-owned publication. Check out this headline, which was published September 26, 2021. So that's 15 days after the attack. 15 days after 9/11, Haaretz says that Odigo workers were warned of the attacks. I'm not saying this. Israeli publication is saying this, and I will read this article verbatim. It says, Odigo, the instant messaging service, says that 2 of its workers received messages 2 hours before the Twin Towers attack on September 11th, predicting that the attack would happen. And the company has been cooperating with Israeli and American law enforcement, including the FBI, in trying to find the original sender of the message, which predicted the attack. I mean, seriously, what on earth are we talking about here? Thereafter, and this is like 2 weeks after 9/11, the vice president of Odigo, it was a man named Alex Diamandis, said that the messages told him that something big was going to happen in a certain amount of time, and it did, almost to the minute. That is a direct quote from the vice president of Odigo. The messages said something big was going to happen in a certain amount of time, and it did, almost to the minute. So for whatever reason, the forewarned Odigo employees did not think that they should just pass that message along to the authorities. Our friends and our allies didn't pass that message along to the authorities, which would have saved thousands of lives. 2 weeks after 9/11, you have this guy saying that. You figure out that you have tons of people that are coming out saying that maybe Israel knew that this was going to happen. Now we know that there's this camera. And then there was a CNN report that came out on September 28th, 2001, which further cemented that fact. And again, I'm showing you this directly from CNN. It reads, quote, "The FBI is looking into whether a warning sent to employees at an instant message company less than 2 hours before the jetliner slammed into the World Trade Center was connected to the attacks," a company executive confirmed on Friday. Okay, so Alex Diamandis, again, that's the vice president of ODACO, said that there was nothing specifically about the attacks. Like, they didn't know that it was going to be a plane that was going to hit, but that it was suspicious in nature because of its timing. He said, quote, "I would describe it as a threat and a warning." He then declined to comment further, citing ongoing investigations. Then there were 2 employees that worked at the ODACO offices in Israel, because they had an Israel base, and they say that they received a message at about 7 a.m. Eastern on September 11th. After the attacks, the staff decided to scour the server logs in order to determine the source of the message, and the information was then passed on to Israeli authorities. And then it's just a cold trail, you guys. So for reference, the first tower was struck at 8:46 a.m., They received a message at 7 o'clock a.m., but your media just lost interest in this. There was no interest in this because, well, we found passports, and the passports make it clear that we are supposed to be really angry at Muslims and all of these other weird things that happen. I don't even know why people are speaking about it. There's no interest in any other subject. Now, let me show you this. This is a Jerusalem Post headline. Jerusalem Post, by the way, it is based in Jerusalem. If that's not obvious, this is from September 12th, 2001. It has since been archived. And it says, quote, "The foreign ministry in Jerusalem has so far received the names of 4,000 Israelis believed to have been in the area of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon at the time of the attack." Okay? Remarkably, here's an update for you. Despite having 4,000 employees in the area, including an entire company, ODACO, which received prior warning of this attack, it turns out, at least according to somebody who was traveling with Bibi Netanyahu to the 9/11 Memorial Center, that a total of 4 Israeli citizens died on that day. I'm going to show you that clip. There's a clip of Bibi Netanyahu with his wife visiting the memorial, and you'll hear somebody in his entourage say that just 4 Israeli citizens died that day. Take a listen.
This whole section that we see here running all the way down is all Cantor Fitzgerald folks.
And so there are how many Israelis?
There's 4 Israelis altogether.
Okay.
I'm happy. I wish that no Americans or Israelis had died on that day. I think it's an interesting development, but I am happy because it is sad when innocent people lose their lives, and something that you could argue was avoidable if other people were able to avoid it because they received prior knowledge of the event. Now we're going to talk about Lucky Larry, Tower 7, Building 7, pardon me. Take a look at this guy before we get to that, and maybe appropriately, because this guy made a ton of money. I'm going to talk to you guys about gold because right now inflation is through the roof. If you think your money and retirement savings are safe, it's time to reevaluate. You need to consider diversifying your savings into a tangible asset that has stood the test of time. I'm talking about gold from Goldco. Right now, I want you to go to CandaceLikesGold.com. They have an incredible team that will guide you every step of the way. Their experts will show you why Goldco is one of the top-rated precious metals companies. Goldco is a great company, and they support this show. And for my listeners, you can get up to a 10% instant match in bonus silver on qualified orders. So whether you've got an IRA and you're looking to transfer to a gold IRA or just want to buy precious metals you can physically hold on to, Goldco can help. Just go to CandaceLikesGold.com. That's CandaceLikesGold.com. All right, so some people really are just that lucky. That's what you got to understand. People just get lucky. And I'll tell you, Larry Silverstein, he is one such person. By the way, you can fact check this and go down your own rabbit hole, but I was trying to figure out what this guy's background is. And apparently he owned a lot of clubs, like dance clubs. And there was a very interesting lawsuit brought against Larry Silverstein back in 2003. It was eventually dropped by the courts. They weren't, the Vietnam War veteran was not able to bring it forward in New York, but he was alleging that Larry Silverstein and Bill Clinton and other politicians were involved in intentionally trying to flood heroin into America. Very interesting, but park that aside because it doesn't matter because Larry Silverstein is not known for any of that today. Rather, he is known as somebody who should buy a lottery ticket every single day. So Now he's recognized as a prominent New York State real estate developer. I should mention here, but he is a personal friend of Bibi Netanyahu, whose name just keeps coming up all the time, I'm telling you. A very connected person. This is Silverstein, connected to Israeli politicians. He's extremely loyal to Israel, also friends with other prime ministers, Ehud Barak. Well, guess what? He obtained the lease for the Twin Towers just 6 weeks prior to 9/11. He took out an insurance policy, which fortunately included coverage for acts of terrorism. So lucky that it included coverage for acts of terrorism, so that when it came time to collect, Silverstein claimed that there were 2 incidences of terror since 2 buildings had been hit by planes, which allowed him to seek for double indemnity. So he collected $4.5 billion from insurance on towers that he had invested in just 6 weeks earlier. I mean, I was pretty shocked when I looked into this. I checked. I was like, there's just no way. Nope. There's no debunking of that. That is an absolute fact. Now, they say that that doesn't imply that he had foreknowledge that this event was going to happen. And getting insurance is, in fact, normal. To be fair, it is normal to get insurance if you are going to take out a lease on these 2 buildings. And he also had some other investors that invested with him, and they all just got extremely lucky. And I'm talking super lucky, because beyond that, okay, so Larry Silverstein was known for spending every morning the exact same way in breakfast meetings at the World Trade Center. This is according to him. He spoke about this in various interviews. But fortunately, so fortunately for Lucky Larry, on the morning of 9/11, he decided, I'm just going to break this habit because I want to go see a dermatologist. And that's what happened. He skipped his normal breakfast meeting to see the dermatologist, which ended up saving his life. And that's not all. Larry also has 2 children who also worked in the World Trade Center and who also were running late on 9/11. So the entire Silverstein family survived and were therefore able to be alive when they collected that insurance money for that terrorist attack, which fortunately they had taken out a clause on in their insurance. So yeah, lucky Larry. I mean, what are we going to make all of this? A lot of this has been memory hold. By the way, super weird video. I'm not sure if you've seen this. People sometimes, when you talk about Larry Silverstein, they'll say, pull it, Larry. And there's a reason for that. So Larry decided to sit down and do all of these interviews about 9/11 thereafter because he's the person that owned these buildings. People wanted to hear from him regarding this terrible terrorist event. And he shared this story about how he was on the phone with the fire department because, you know, it's really strange. If you examine the footage of Building 7 collapsing, have you guys actually seen that footage? You probably, maybe, I'm just going to jog your memory because, and by the way, don't listen to me. I am totally being conspiratorial here. It looks like it was a demolition. I mean, I've seen a demolition before. Look at this video of the building going down. Yeah, there you go. And then it just kind of collapses all at once. Yeah, that's a video. I'm actually going to show you a side-by-side because I'm just going, that really looks like a controlled demolition. Look at this side-by-side. That you don't even know which one is Building 7. That's just a side-by-side demolition and Building 7. So this obviously inspired tons of conspiracy theories, which were only furthered by this interview of Larry talking about how he told the fire department chief to pull it. Now I'm going to tell you what he says about why he said that. But first, let's listen to Larry Silverstein, Lucky Larry, in his own words.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
That's very interesting. A lot of things interesting. So here I go with common sense again. I hate this, but you know, on a day like this, people running, screaming, being buried in rubble, looking for loved ones, fire department must have received how many phone calls? And you're telling me that the fire commander thought to himself in this emergency, hey, I should call and get the opinion of the building owner on how to do my job. I don't know. That strikes me as weird. Maybe I'm not a powerful person in New York City, because I always imagined that, like, if my house was on fire and I wasn't there because I was at the dermatologist, conveniently, thank goodness, and it was just burning down, I just don't think that the fire commander would call me and say, hey, what's your opinion, man? It's just burning. And then I would say, like, yeah, pull it. Like, it's my job to direct the fire department how to do their job. It just seems weird that I would be in touch with them. Is that a normal thing? Maybe it is. Maybe this is a New York City thing. Weird. I was born in New York, and I just don't remember that, like, buddy thing. Like, here's who we call. Usually they do their job, and there was a lot going on that day. But apparently this guy thought, let me call the owner of the building and get his opinion on what we should do about Building 7. And so when Larry was pushed on this, like, why would you say pull it? By the way, in general, pull what? He was like, oh, I just meant, like, pull the operation. Like, he's saying, I meant let's not send any more fire department people. Let's not send any more firemen in there. We don't want any more loss of life. So pull them out, because, again, this would have been his decision somehow. That's what he meant. And then people looked into that story, and there were some holes, because the fire commander said that he never spoke to Larry. And there's one independent journalist named Luke Rutkowski who decided to confront Larry about his story not matching up with the memory of the fire chief. Take a listen.
This one's for Larry Silverstein. Last time we talked, sir, I asked you if you could address some of the 9/11 conspiracy theories that you're accused of. Sadly, your response has actually invited more of them. I mean, for the record, everybody knows your infamous comments on PBS where you said pull Building 7. On 5/25 on the day of 9/11.
They were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Your official response was that it was the firefighters. My question is, it was pretty clear that you meant the building, and if it was the firefighters, they already are outside the building by 12. Because the water lines were broken.
Ask the question.
And the fire chief that you said you spoke to, Fire Chief Negro, denies talking to you on that day of 9/11. Can you answer those questions and address the theories against you?
I suggest everybody's consideration that we all look at the thousands of pages of testimony that have been rendered in the many years since 9/11. And let's use today's session for some of this.
Are you aware of testimony of bombs in the building before the building collapsed, sir? Are you aware of that testimony? Sir, there's testimony by Barry Jennings. Sir, you don't have to touch me. Listen, I'll walk away. All I'm asking is a question. I don't have to be kicked out. It's a legitimate question. You don't have to put your hands on me. But all I'm saying is, no, I'm not. I'm here asking. The question was not answered. That's why I have agreed. Larry Silverstein was told not to come into work. That's why him, his daughter, and his son never showed up to work on 9/11. He put an insurance policy on the buildings. Reporters, do your job. Please ask some questions.
Well, obviously, Luke is crazy. It's inappropriate to ask questions. Larry really is just that lucky. Just, like, tremendously lucky. And so what if he misremembered the story about speaking to the fire chief and saying pull it? These things happen in a tragedy where you recall speaking to someone that maybe doesn't remember speaking to you or whatever. Again, the purpose of this episode is to tell you the things that I'm going to need you to forget, because I am sick of these conspiracy theories. On the other side of this, there are some people who really are just that unlucky. And one such example, and so they're telling you, listen, you got to just believe in his luck. Larry's lucky, but BBC really was just unlucky when they accidentally reported that Building 7 had fallen 23 minutes before it fell. So what I just showed you, yeah, they already reported 23 minutes before it fell that it had fallen, and they already had the pre-baked excuse for why it fell, despite the fact that it was not hit by a plane. Anyways, just take a listen to the report that came out 23 minutes too early.
More on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attack.
Well, the building had been weakened. You know how it is sometimes, like when your house is on fire and so then the house next to you just completely collapses. No? Hello? No, you guys never seen that situation happen? Well, sometimes if there's a house on fire, just the house across the street can get stressed out and just feels fundamentally weakened. And Larry says to pull it. You know, because it's just, there's no point in losing any more life. And he says that to, we don't know who. Doesn't matter because he's at a dermatologist appointment. Anyways, let's move on. I feel like this is just getting crazy. It doesn't matter that they reported a little bit early. They had a perfectly valid excuse. They said that they copied the report from another publication, Reuters. Reuters said it first, which doesn't really answer the question as to why any of them said it first before the tower had actually fallen, given that the tower was not directly next door. There were also buildings in between that did not fall, but this tower did. You know, there is actually something interesting to know, in case you haven't looked into it, about Building 7, World Trade Center Building 7. Do you know what the tenants are? Like who was working there at the time? Well, you had the CIA, the DOD, the Secret Service, the IRS, and the SEC. All of that was what was going on in that building, as well as other multinational investment banks. Very interesting. That tower fell in under 7 seconds, like a textbook type of implosion of some sort, regardless of it not being struck by an airplane or having any kind of structural damage. It just went down. Yeah, you're like, I don't even know which one of these is supposed to be Building 7. But yeah, that is what happened. And like I said, that was reported 23 minutes before it had even happened. Who could have imagined it? Who could have been so unlucky as to have accidentally predicted that it was going to fall? But then let's flip again, because some people really are that lucky. We're back to luck again. It was an unlucky, but then it was lucky because the Pentagon, now that's a really interesting thing. And this really is the number 5 thing that I'm going to have to ask all of you guys to simply forget, okay? A lot of strange things about the Pentagon. A lot of strange things happened that day. But you should know that leading up, Pentagon was getting audited. And they had, and they always have done this really since, lost $2.3 trillion. Oopsies. I know we keep taxing you guys, and we're taxing you because of things, NASA, which has become a black budget, and wars overseas that are not really tangible. But then it comes time to audit. So the way that that audit works is that the DOD is supposed to audit the Pentagon. So you're following me here? The DOD's office was in the World Trade Center, and so they are auditing in Building 7. Where did the $2.3 trillion go? And they issued a report, the DOD, saying that they're not giving us any of the files. We're unable to say and account for this $2.3 trillion. You had Donald Rumsfeld being like, well, you know, we're just, technology is changing and we're doing things the old way here at the Pentagon. And in the old way, we just can't find $2.3 trillion. And then, could you imagine, both World Trade Center, where they're doing the auditing, goes kaput, and then the Pentagon gets hit by a plane. I know, it's just so weird. So there were all these people who were like, yeah, why haven't we seen a plane hitting it? You remember this? You remember being alive for this? It was just, you looked at the building and there was just kind of a hole in the middle. We were told a plane hit. And what was interesting is actually CNN had a reporter on the ground that day that was able to get up close to this after the crash and reported that there was no plane. By the way, they only aired this once and then it got memory hold. So I'm going to show you what this reporter said, who was able to walk up to the Pentagon building after it was allegedly hit by a plane. Take a listen.
Outside the Pentagon, CNN's military affairs correspondent Jamie McIntyre. And Jamie, you got
very close to where that plane went down.
That's right, Judy. A while ago, I walked right up to next to the building. Firefighters were still trying to put out the blaze. The fire, by the way, is still burning in some parts of the Pentagon. And I took a look at the huge gaping hole that's in this sideway. But from my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual side of the building that's crashed in. And as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, a fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around.
Yeah, and they didn't show us anything for years. A lot of this stuff was classified. And also what's really interesting is they decided to confiscate 82 videos of people that just had CCTV footage, gas station across the street. The FBI agents went out there and made sure within the first minutes following this attack that they confiscated all of the footage surrounding of this plane that allegedly hit the Pentagon. And there were military men that were there that day that swore that they heard a missile, said that they had lived there, it had fought overseas. It was unmistakable what the sound of a missile was, and they heard a missile that day. And I'm just going to show you, by the way, the Pentagon building here after the plane, which that CNN reporter is saying he did not see even when he was up close and examining firefighters, which were whom were trying to get the fire out. This was it right here. So yeah, a plane must have gone into there sideways, and then for whatever reason was unable to be observed by a reporter that was up close. And for whatever reason, people that were there that day who said that they heard a missile were quieted, were not being listened to by the public. And we were just told that a plane definitively hit the Pentagon. But the more important story here is that the Pentagon then, I mean, how could we ask them after such a horrific terrorist attack, pardon me, to still be held to trying to find those trillions of dollars? That's so unfair. We had to come together as a nation, accept that we had been blindly robbed by the Pentagon, because that's what we do in times of a mass psychosis event. We come together, we hug, and we decide that, hey, that's all right if you lost $3.2 trillion. We don't know where it went. You don't know where it went. And conveniently, the two offices that should know where it went, the people that are auditing, are now no longer available. They've just been taken out by terrorist attacks. In case you don't know, the Pentagon controls nearly 70% of the budget of the federal government. And yet, when they make announcements like the $600 billion that is currently missing right now in aid that has gone to Ukraine, no one seems to ever bat an eyelash. Yeah, it does seem pretty obvious that they are funneling money through the Pentagon without any issues. And when you ask questions, well, that's not appropriate. That's not you being a patriotic American. Rah, 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 war, war, war. And by the way, that, again, was obviously the end result of 9/11. Forget all the holes, forget all the questions, forget all the conspiracy theorists, forget the fact that the term conspiracy theorist only came into the lexicon, only entered into the American conscience after JFK was shot. And you know, a lot of the same suspects were on the ground the day that JFK was shot too. I should do an episode on all of the weird things and similarly things that are classified and just will never get declassified about JFK being shot. We just have this habit of just, forget it, just forget it. The point is, hate Muslims. That is the point. That is the lesson. That is the my psychosis formation. And if you ever break from that and you start to wonder whether or not it is plausible that your government could be so evil that they would allow this event to take place, that they would allow American citizens to be ruthlessly murdered because there was a larger military industrial complex incentives that they wanted to help feed, a larger narrative, and maybe it was simply an incursion, a nonstop incursion into the Middle East. If you ever get that idea, if you then start thinking, okay, well, didn't we then kind of inexplicably go to war with Iraq despite the fact that the passports that were found were Saudi? And then we said we were going to war with Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction, that we then went in there and we killed 1 million, I'm talking 1 million Iraqi civilians, women and children murdered ruthlessly looking for weapons of mass destruction that were then never found. If you start thinking about that, And then you go, wait a second. And then we just suddenly pulled out, and then we were in Afghanistan. And this is all because of Saudi. And we never invaded Saudi. And what is going on? How does any of this make sense? If you start to put that all together and then arrive at this question of literally what the hell is the United States doing in the Middle East? How could war in the Middle East ever be serving our interests way over here? If you get that idea and you start asking yourself that question, let me remind you that it's dangerous. It's a dangerous question to ask yourself. It's a dangerous conspiracy theory to ask yourself. And only the craziest conspiracy theorists would just go back and look at evidence and believe their own eyes. You know, we have journalists now, and those journalists are in the mainstream, and they will be doing the observing for you, and they will tell you what to think. And so, like I said, put that away and just remember the instructions. The instructions are to hate Muslims, to never ask what the hell it is we're doing in the Middle East and why we can't stop, to never ask what country, which country it is that is benefiting from everything that we're doing in the Middle East. And, you know, don't believe your own eyes. That's always the point, the main point. Don't believe your own eyes. All right, guys, before I get into reading some of your comments, I want to remind you that I am always speaking freely. I'm always speaking purely. And that is why I love that one of the sponsors of this show is...
H-SIP training exercises are real. Like for real, for real.
What are the odds on my doing research on false flags? And there is a current active shooter. False flag it. H-SIP training exercise.
CNN has an article on these exercises.
Here's a look at the National Exercise Program, the U.S. System for Emergency Preparation Drills. These exercises are mandated by Congress to test and strengthen federal, state, and local government ability to respond to potential catastrophic events.
An exercise in 2003 lasted for 5 full days.
And it cost the taxpayers $16 million.
More than 8,500 people from 100 federal, state, and local agencies, as well as the American Red Cross and Canadian government, are involved.
April 4th to 8th, 2005. Takes place in Connecticut and New Jersey. Approximately 10,000 participants from 27 federal agencies, state, county, and local officials, and more than 150 private sector and non-government organizations take part. In total, over 275 government and private organizations participate. Interrelated events take place in Canada, Triple Play, and Great Britain, Atlantic Blue.
And you know our government never stopped these training exercises. And their LARPing grew into real-world history-changing events, J6 and now J13.
When does a cop ever carry assortment of snacks and cases of bottled water? The H-SIP manual covers food and refreshments for all participants.
The manual goes into all aspects of orchestrating a false flag. He even goes into details on having table tents and rehearsing the role play out. And interesting enough, what the fuck are these things called again?
Tents. I should make a video going over these official H-SIP manual, as it answers a lot of questions to these supposedly real-world questionable events.
Like, what the fuck was this guy doing?
Like, why the fuck is this guy just casually walking during an active shooting event with his hands behind his back too? Like, what the fucks?
According to the H-SIP manual, these guys are ground truth advisors.
An individual responsible for ensuring that the scenario details remain consistent during exercise conduct.
That is why he is doing all the signaling to keep the exercise on schedule as planned.
The signal.
LARP off.
But single American hero died.
Nobody got shot and no body died that day. These are all crisis actors.
Hot day plus fake blood equals red paint.
That is why the ground truth advisors are watering down the red paint because it looks fake as fuck.
Watch the controllers pour water all over his dark shorts and shirt.
Now look at the advisor in the bucket hat. Tell this controlled opposition, potential future congressman, possible future president of the U.S. to pour water over the red paint that's supposed to be fake blood on the stands.
And the cameraman, better known as C3P Meme, edits that part out. Any law enforcement involved with these need to blow the whistle and expose these exercises. Y'all can't be that dumb to believe this is right, and don't think you are in a big club, 'cause you ain't. The IRL Robocops are around the corner. Look at the controlled opposition flash's wristband.
How are all these civilians calling the shots?
These people exiting the stands are real civilians. The HC play planners design it so they all leave with a little PTSD. By making them exit towards the gruesome bloodbath.
In what world would these guys be giving orders to officers and allowed to just loiter around a crime scene?
Only in an HC exercise. False flag it world.
I'm gonna get that picture.
Crisis overacting.
Commanding people to get down while you yourself aren't getting down.
Oh yeah, we forgot. He's our ride.
I'll explain why this happened on another video.
Because the LARP didn't go down like dress rehearsals?
Since it was a hot day and dead people don't sweat or move, they needed to take Corey away. These crisis actors didn't know what to do, as it's not like rehearsals. Which the two I repeat the two wife and daughter needed to be reminded that they were family and be with the husband and father. You know, like normal people would. Again, mother and daughter, just two.
And now there's wife and daughter, 3.
And one HC lead controller with his fake tattoos, trying to spit game at one or two or all of the actresses.
How do you know he's a controller?
Because the dumbass left his work badge on.
He works at Allegheny Health Network.
Disaster medicine training both on-site and externally with at least 2 MCI exercises per year and the potential for additional training with FEMA.
It is easier to fool a fool than to convince a fool they've been fooled.
So stop being a fool, you fucking fool!
All right, let's see what is going on in the comments section. It's This should be a very fun comment section. All right. Sarah writes, Candace, it's started. They are banning the Orthodox Church in Ukraine. To my Muslim crew, we need to stick up for our Christian brothers and sisters. Now more than ever, united we are strong. Listen, I have been very clear on what is going on over there. It is an ethnic cleansing of Christians. They are enlisting Christians to the front lines to die on purpose. I believe that Zelensky is a Bolshevik. I will say this 1,000 times until people start to understand that he is an evil, evil man, and he is being supported by the West. They have always hated Christians. If you begin to examine world events as a holy war, things will make a lot more sense. Tito writes, keep speaking truth. You can't be stopped. You are the best. Thank you so much, Tito. Mama Bear Steph writes, God bless you, Candace. Thank you for speaking up for the truth. They have tried to hide the facts of 9/11 forever. The truth will come out. Listen, here is how it works. Eventually, their entire narrative will collapse because that's how it works with lies. lies eventually always collapse under their own weight. So they can do well for a bit. You know, a lie is faster than the truth, right? But when the truth catches up, it is no match. There is no match between the lie and the truth, and you really start to see that. Natalie writes, I got chills. Thank you, Natalie. Swole Monkey writes, it's crazy because now we are supposed to welcome Muslims into America with open arms. If not, we're xenophobic. I was 22 on 9/11. I remember it well. They made us feel hatred and fear for Muslims. Again, who benefits from the cleansing of Muslims from their home territories? These are the questions you have to ask yourself. Forget the mainstream narrative. Every war, you ask yourself, who is the winner? Because despite the fact that we are the ones sponsoring all of these wars, in the same way that we are being blinded by hatred that's being painted, there is clearly a deception being played the other way around. People believe that Americans agree with all this, that it's Americans who hate, Muslims. And we are essentially inheriting the sins of a very small group of elitists who are making both sides hate each other when neither side is benefiting from that hatred. Run05 writes, I think it was CNN that reported on Building 7 collapsing before it did, and still no one thought it was weird. Sheep and crooks. It was actually the BBC that reported that. It was 23 minutes before, and their claim, and actually one BBC woman, I didn't even show it, one reporter was standing in front of the tower before it collapsed, and she said that it had collapsed. And again, their excuse for that report was, well, we had copied it from Reuters. And it still begs the question, how did any person know that that tower was going to collapse? Who on earth would have thought that a tower that had not been hit would collapse from a fire? That's just not even a rational point. Like, that's just, why would you assume that? But again, that person was just unlucky, and it was just an uh-oh mistake. And there were a lot of uh-oh mistakes made that way. JTH writes, keep up the great work, Candace. Thank you so much. I intend to keep digging on all of these stories because, you just start to realize that virtually everything that we were told was an intentional lie. Like, we are living, when we use that reference of The Matrix, it's not to be cheesy. It's because that movie best illustrates what we have gone through. We have gone through a system of propaganda in the school system. We have a system of mockingbird journalists who work for both the left and the right, who make you think that this is a battle between the left and the right. It is not. It is a battle between light and darkness. It is a battle between evil and goodness. And there are good people on the left, there are good people on the right, and we get distracted by fighting the wrong enemy, thinking that it's one another, while they want people to think that they're winning and that, what really matters is who's the next politician. It doesn't matter. I mean, we are talking about God versus Satan. It is the story of mankind. It's what brought me back and closer to my faith, because the more that you recognize this deception that has been played upon the world, the more you realize that you're only guard against it. The only truth is the capital T truth, and that is God. That is Christ. And it is a true spiritual warfare. It is incomprehensible to people that are watching us. And I'm sure for a lot of people, this is new information, and you're thinking it is incomprehensible that a government could be involved in something like this, that they could impart this sort of evil on its own citizens. And I am telling you, governments do this all around the world, and they do this in collaboration with one another in the West. I truly believe that. They do this so that they can mass psychosis event that they create in order to convince the public to be okay with the next great evil that they are going to impart. You want to kill 1 million Iraqi civilians? How are you going to dehumanize Muslims? You need a big event to do that. You need a big event. Otherwise, the humanity in all of us, the goodness, is going to go, what is wrong with you? You have no right to kill 1 million women and children. So the pattern never changes, okay? It's always a terrorist event followed by the conclusion that we have to go to war. And that's why I urge people to go backwards and to see how many times this was happening. I brought up JFK today. You may want to look up, just do it on Google, Operation Northwoods. When the CIA went to JFK and said, hey, President, we have an idea. We want to go to war with Cuba. Obviously, murdering a bunch of Cubans is not something the American people and they would be okay with because they have hearts. So what about we just execute a terrorist attack? Maybe we'll take down a building. Maybe we'll take down a U.S. carrier, and we blame it on Cubans. But we do it to our own people. What if we kill our own citizens in New York, or if we kill our own citizens in Miami? I'm not being dramatic here. This is exactly what happened. The CIA came to JFK with this plan to commit a terrorist event on American soil in order for us to go to war. And JFK, a Catholic man, looked at them and said, "You're out of your mind. You are crazy. You are insane. I will never sign off on you murdering civilians to further your own causes." And then the CIA got lucky because JFK was assassinated. And then they were able to do whatever it was they wanted because he wanted to scatter the CIA into the wind in a million pieces. He said they were corrupt. This is a gang. This is not a group of people that are serving American interests. And so they got rid of JFK. And in his place was installed LBJ, one of the most, actually not even one, I would actually say the most evil president that ever served the United States of America was Lyndon Baines Johnson. Full on commie, in my opinion. And what he and Henry Kissinger did, the amount of mass psychosis events, what they did overseas, Cambodia, what they did overseas, Vietnam, what they were able to accomplish while he was president. That was when the American people got sold out on the day that JFK was shot, and we have never righted the ship. That is my belief. That is my full belief. Take it to the bank. Write your headlines, journalists. I literally do not care. Anyways, guys, we are over time here. I'm looking forward to seeing what it is that you guys think. Be sure to share this episode. Share it everywhere. Obviously, we're starting from the bottom here on Rumble, but we're going to rebuild because they are never going to change the fact that people are pursuing truth and they know where and when they can hear it, and that we have lost faith in our institutions. And honestly, we should have lost that faith a lot sooner. You guys can find me on Locals if you want to support the show, support our independence. You can also head to clubcandace.com and get yourself some gear. You can get yourself a Standis cup. You can get yourself a sweatshirt that says "Life's Tough." Get a helmet. Tons of way to support my independence. And we're going to keep going. We're just going to keep going. There are a ton of things that we should be asking questions about. Share this episode, and thank you guys so much. We will see you tomorrow. It is Friday. See you then.